killed him, or he wounded him, and then he died later in a battle at Megiddo. And this was 609 BC. Then in 605 BC, Pharaoh Necho's army finally met up with the Babylonian army, and they were crushed at a place called Carchemish. Okay? Now, in the meantime, all of these kings, you have Jehoahaz, who only reigned 3 months, did evil in the sight of the Lord, was taken to Egypt, died there. Then you had Jehoiakim, who reigned 11 years, did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and he also was captured, okay, by the Babylonians. Then you had Jehoiakim, and he also only reigned 3 months, did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Then wicked Zedekiah, the last king of Israel, he did what was evil, and his sons were killed before him, and then his eyes were plucked out, and then he was taken to Babylon to die in prison. Now, Jeremiah was the man, the mouth, the voice of God, to say to the Israelites, all of these ugly things don't have to happen if you will just repent. Why does Jeremiah have to talk to Israel? Israel was supposed to be the great nation to show the face of God to the world. Exodus chapter 19 verses 3 through 7. Israel was chosen to be the holy nation, the royal priesthood. That is a priesthood nation to the rest of the world. Then we look at Deuteronomy chapter 28 verses 11 and 12. Israel was the only nation on earth given the name of God. Turn to Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 1, and I would like for you to reflect with me to Genesis chapter 13 verse 13 and Genesis chapter 15 verse 15. Two references that are very easy to remember. 13:13 in Genesis says that the men of Sodom and Gomorrah were great sinners. These were Canaanite cities, the land that Israel would eventually possess. Then we look at Genesis chapter 15:15. We find that the wickedness of the Amorites is not yet full. Israel, you are going to conquer this land when the wickedness of the Amorites are full. God is being long-suffering towards them, sending them prophets that they might repent. Remember, Melchizedek was one of the priests of the Canaanite cities of that Jebusite city that was later renamed Jerusalem. Now, when we look at Deuteronomy chapter 7, we're going to see just what God wanted Israel to do when they entered the promised land. Here we have the judgment of God against a sinful race of people. These people had heard the voice of God and decided not to believe it and decided to continue to live in sin. If you remember Sodom and Gomorrah, remember it was a city of homosexuals. And their homosexual appetite was so big that when stricken with blindness, they groped around at the door. Can you imagine? Even when made blind, their appetites for sin still did not leave them. Man, oh man. A whole city. And Deuteronomy chapter 7 and the rest, parts of Genesis, so on, lets us know that the entire nation, or all the nations of the land of Canaan, were going that way. But Sodom and Gomorrah were sticking out at that time, but the rest of the cities became that way later on. And this is why God drove them out. Look at chapter 7, verse 1. Read what it says, please. And the Lord your God brings you into this land. He's going to drive out the many nations before you. Hittites. Okay, drop down to about verse 4. Go ahead. Do not make any covenants with these people. You utterly destroy every one of them. Show no mercy, verse 3 says. Show no mercy to these people. Why? Because this is the judgment of God against a wicked nation. Okay? All right? The judgment of God. What is God doing? He is vindicating his righteousness, right? What is God doing? He is vindicating his fairness. He is not allowing the wicked to get by. Okay? The wicked, you will receive recompense of reward for your wicked deeds. Okay? God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. And what he's doing is he is using Israel as an instrument of his judgment against the Canaanite nations. But Israel, out of all the nations of the earth, you are to show my name. You are to show my face. And when you go and extend my judgment upon these Canaanites, you are doing it in my name because you are living in concert with my word. Okay? Read on.
They will turn your sons away from following me.
They will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods, and the Lord's anger will burn against them. Read. Read.
This is what you are to do to them. Break down their altars.
Break down their altars. You smash all of their sacred shrines.
Cut down their Asherah.
In other words, you totally remove from the land any trace of that civilization. Okay? Any trace of it. I want the entire culture. I want all of their customs. I want their religion. And I want the people out. I've given them years and years to repent and turn to me, and they have not done it. But now look at Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 16. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 16. What does it say? Peter, do you have it? Read it, please. I will pronounce my judgment upon my people because of their wickedness and forsaking me. You see, folks, God's righteousness is at stake. The justice of God is at stake. Okay? The fairness of God is at stake. God, are you a respecter of persons? Are you a prejudiced God? Okay? As many skeptics have accused God of being. God, you favor the Jews. God, you let the Jews get away with anything and everything. This text says no. God is not going to let the Jews get away with anything. Read. Burning incense to other gods, worshiping what their hands have made. Wait a minute, folks. Look at this. This sounds like the people that they were driving out. The Israelites had become like the people they drove out, and now God is going to drive them out. God's justice was at stake. God's righteousness is at stake. The Godhood of God is at stake. He must execute judgment upon his own people. His face was not being shown to the rest of the world because his people failed to live in concert with his word. Chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Let's look at it. Chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Go ahead, read it, please. If you return presupposes that you have left, right? Okay? Read. Return to me, declares the Lord. Read. Hey, if you put them out of my sight, presupposes that they were in his sight, right? Okay? And you'll find that those 4 kings that I mentioned at the top of the lesson were all idolatrous kings. They were men who burned their own sons on the altar. They were men who made compromises with the gods of this world.